Let's find out more about the dire situation in Gaza. Joining us is Graeme Bannerman. He's with the Middle East Institute here in Washington, D.C., and a former analyst for the U.S. State Department. Thanks for joining us. I want to start with that attack at the school in Gaza. And regardless of who's at fault, what happens when an international organization like the United Nations gets caught in the crossfire?
Well, this is the tragedy of Gaza. Gaza is a very small place. It's twice the size of the District of Columbia with 3 times the population. You cannot have the amount of shelling and bombing of an area without getting civilians, and that is what you see every day on television about what's happening to the people of Gaza. It's a tragedy.
Because there's nowhere to go for them to go, really, at this point.
There is no place. I mean, because even 40% of Gaza is a free fire zone, so you're literally trapped in 60% of this small area. There is no place for them to go. Civilian casualties are inevitable. It is a tragedy.
Do you think at this point that the Israelis will finish their military Operation Protective Edge before a ceasefire deal is even reached? It seems like this has been going on for days. Do you think there is any progress being made behind the scenes in Cairo?
One can hope that there's progress towards a ceasefire, but the issue is the people of Gaza have an untenable life. And this has been the reason for the fighting. They are in a prison camp. They are held on all sides. They have no access to the world. And they themselves, the more the fighting goes on, keep saying, we're not going to give up until this condition is changed. It's not just a ceasefire for them, it's ending the blockade.
And that's what they are insistent on. You know, now there have been clashes in the West Bank. Do you see this conflict spilling into other areas as it has already?
It is really a Gaza issue right now because Gaza is treated specially. But clearly you cannot be a Palestinian or an Arab nationalist anywhere in the region without being moved by the signs, the things they see of the death of children and everything else and the suffering of the Gazans.
The UN is calling this situation dire. What is your assessment, and can the UN do anything at this point? There have been debate after debate, tons of talk the last couple of days, and now it's saying the situation is dire. What can it come out and do?
Well, there's suggestions that a temporary ceasefire, because you're now beginning to run short of water and food and basic medical supplies. Hopefully, at least that can be relieved in the short term. But unless the international community helps the Israelis and the Palestinians address the underlying issues, it's hard to see how this situation will be anything but just an interregnum before another conflict unless the basic underlying problems are addressed.
And you're talking about a humanitarian ceasefire.
A humanitarian ceasefire. That's the best you can hope for at this time, because the Palestinians need to change the basic situation in Gaza. You cannot have 1.8 million people held in a prison camp as they are.
What do you think will happen here in the near future? Do you see this going for days, weeks? What's your projection? One
of the problems with the Middle East, if you've ever made any prognosis, you're always wrong. It's going on, whatever it is, it's too long. You just hope that the international community begins to address the real problems and not just the temporary fix. This is also a problem for Israel. I think Israel has seen things go not the way they expected. And I think one of the basic changes is, unlike 2008 and 2009, there was one international journalist in Gaza. Today, there are dozens of them. And every night, for every story that comes out of Israel, there's one story that comes out of Gaza. And I think the world has seen the suffering much more this time than they did back in 2008 and 2009, and that's having a huge impact on world opinion, and that's not good for Israel.
All right, Graeme Bannerman, we appreciate your insight and your perspective. Thank you so much for joining us here on the show.
My pleasure.